Well, it would not be a me, myself, and I stream if I didn't have some technical flub up right at the beginning. I never do this. I'm hoping you guys can hear me. I'm going to wait until I see that you can hear me because this has happened before that I've started to talk and people are like, we can't hear you. So, can you hear me? Yay! Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Sorry about that. I despise YouTube's live stream. I don't know how it's done. I'm a Luddite, and I hate everything in the world right now because I hate when things don't work. So, hi, I'm in a good mood. All right, well, we're here now. We're here now. Huzzah. Hello. Hello, hello, hello. First of all, welcome to the official, no, it's not official anything. It's just welcome. Thank you, everybody who has participated in the Broken Empires RPG Kickstarter. We have had unprecedented levels of success. Unprecedented because I've never done this before, so I guess anything would be unprecedented. But this is beyond my wildest expectations. Amazing. The first day, we did over 200,000, which is amazing. And every day, people are coming in, more and more and more, which is fantastic. I've done a couple of really great interviews with Dave Thalmavor over on his channel and Baron Durop over on Dungeon Masterpiece's channel. I just did an interview with Professor Dungeon Master today, which was awesome. He's going to put that out next week or the week after. I can't remember when. I think next week. So keep your eyes open for that. Really cool stuff. It's funny because he is a real rules light guy, and I'm not. And so I was all expecting we're going to have this big battle royale about rules light versus rules complex. I wouldn't call my game rules heavy. But we didn't. He basically said, yeah, I love your game. So I was like, oh, good. He was part of the playtest group that we did for YouTube, for members and patrons and stuff like that. And it was him and Kelsey Dion and creator of Shadow Dark and Dave Thalmavor. And it was great. It was great. And I was terrified because it was the first real full session I had run. This is a few months ago. But they loved it, which was so cool. So, yeah, it's great. He basically said, yeah, I was a big fan of Warhammer Fantasy, which obviously I was too. And he said, your game feels a lot like that, but it feels like better. And I was like, oh, that is a gargantuan compliment. So it's cool. I am super excited about where the game is right now. We have been working the hell out of it to make sure that everything fits. There's a lot going on in this game to design it. The more I do to try and design it, I'm working very hard to design it so that you guys have even less to do at the table. That is the idea. But there's a lot of moving parts that have to be put together in such a way that it doesn't create complexity, needless complexity for you. So that's what we're going for. Anyway, today we are doing an Ask Me Anything. So I have a moderator, Brazen Carson, who is standing by, and he is going to be helping me figure out what questions I can ask, or not questions I can ask. Sorry, I'm still complete. I'm flubbing up because I was thrown off by this false start we had. No, he's going to help forward me questions that, he says he's not a moderator on this one. Good news. Well, you really should be. Okay, let me fix that. I'm going to have to do that right now. Well, I'm glad you hear me, Carson. There is that. Let's see here. Well, there you go. It says you're a moderator, so you should have the power. You have the power. Oh. Well, no, you should. You're still a moderator. You're still a moderator. You're still listed. Anyway, whatever. We're going to try and answer as many of your questions as possible. I know there's going to be a lot of repeats. There's going to be a lot of multiple people asking the same kinds of things. So Carson is going to try and help me get to those as much as possible. But there's going to be a bunch. So I crave your patience as we go. So I'm going to jump to the top here and see where we are at. So. Where are we here? Okay. And a special welcome to all of my patrons and YouTube channel members. I'm going to try and specifically answer your questions if I can remember to do that. There's a lot of you watching. So Alderon Crumbs, who I think I recognize from the Discord. Is resolve being tied to both encumbrance from armor as we as a precious weaver resource, how the lightly armored caster trope works? I'm not sure if I understand that question. Is resolve being tied to both encumbrance from armor as a precious weaver resource? Yes, resolve is tied to armor. So resolve is really crucial for everybody, but more so for casters. Resolve is how you improve your chances of success. There's no rerolls anymore. There was a reroll at one point, but I got rid of that. But resolve is crucial. And the more armor you have, the more it impacts your resolve. Same with your fatigue. The more fatigue you take, it impacts your resolve. So spellcasters really are not wearing a lot of armor typically because it impacts their resolve. So that. JP, question, have you slept in 4 days? No, I have not. It's funny, I sent Kelsey a message, Kelsey Dion from Shadow Dark. I said, how did you survive the first week? And how do you not sink into despair because there's all these expectations you have and some of them are wildly met and some of them are not? And she said, you're doing great. Everybody loves this. Your page looks great. The game's great. Everything's great. And I went, okay, all right, thanks, coach. Thanks, coach. But no, not a lot of sleep. We have been working around the clock on getting this thing going. And I will tell you, it is me and a tiny little team that's doing everything. So we are run off our feet doing this, but I gotta make a big shout out to my team because without these guys, I'd be dead in the water. So thanks to everybody who's doing that. Okay, where are we here? Lots. I'm gonna have a hard time following this, guys. Glenn Finney, I backed. I like a lot of the ideas behind it, but would love to see some more written stuff about the system. Yes, of course. Over the course of this month, I'm going to be teasing out a little bit more. I'm not going to show you specifics right now because the game is not laid out. And it's not even done yet. Like it's like 90% done. But what I could show you today would be a pages document. It's what I call my vomit draft. And I'm not going to show you that because you only get one chance to make a first impression. And I don't want you guys basically seeing what is essentially a scratch pad of notes. It's not that. But I don't want to show something that isn't ready to be shown yet. I am an artist at the end of the day, and I shall not reveal my art until it is ready for my patrons' eyes to see. So I will show you little bits as we go, but I'm not going to show you like the whole thing because I'm not. It's not ready. It's not fit for human consumption yet. I am going to do a dedicated video on the character sheet, though. That's coming up in the next little while because the character sheet, you can learn a lot about a game from looking at a character sheet. One of the first things I do when I'm going to buy a new game is I look at the character sheet because I know right away, based on the character sheet, I get a sense of what's important to the designer. I get a sense of what kind of system it is in terms of its core dice mechanics. I get a lot of information. So there's been a lot of you asking about that, and for good reason, because I'd asked the same thing. So I've heard, and I'm responding, and I will show you the character sheet. Now, the reason why I haven't shown anything yet is because, again, the one you may have seen in the advertisements or in the trailer video is out of date. That's months old. And the way the pace at which my game is moving, things are out of date within hours. So I'm trying to get the most current version that is presentable and looks as close as the real thing might actually look as possible before I show it to you. But that is coming, so keep your eyes open for that. Okay, as the shipping costs to some countries are crazy, not your fault, I know. I am hoping you'd release a stripped-down version of the core mechanics at a reduced price, maybe around $15 or $20, PDF rules specifically. That's why we have the digital bundle. The digital bundle is $39, but with it you get everything. You get digital versions of the book and the GM screen and the starter set and the STL files for the minis and all of the core rules updates and all the unlockable digital stuff. So I know that a lot of you who are in international zones, shipping costs suck and we have no control over it. It's not up to us at all. But they suck, and especially my friends down in Australia and New Zealand, you guys get hit really hard, and it sucks. So that's why we have the digital bundle, because we want to be able to make everything available to you at a reasonable price. But I'm not releasing just the core book as a PDF at this time. Maybe after the campaign is over, but for now, I'm in the business of selling books, guys, not in the business of selling PDFs. And I know that everybody loves PDFs, but I'm writing a book. For me, when I have a PDF, it's just a reference document. It's a reference document that I sometimes use, but I have the book in my hand. That's just my values as a gamer. But I did want to make sure that the book is available for everybody who buys a book, obviously, like the PDF version. And for those of you who can't afford to get solid items because of the shipping, that's what the digital bundle is for. But again, with the digital bundle, you get everything. So digitally speaking, it's kind of all or nothing, but you know, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's being included with these stretch goals and stuff. So it's quite a bargain, if you ask me. Anyway, okay, where are we here? Laura Alexander, longtime patron, I believe. I'm excited about the naval component. There can be ship battles. Oh yes, there will. Very much like the ship battles in Season 3 of Me, Myself, and I, although updated and converted over for use with the Broken Empire system. I love ship-to-ship combat. I don't know what it is. I just think it's the coolest thing ever. So, yes, the naval combat is now unlocked, and it will be part of the core rule book, so I'm very, very, very excited. Okay. Vortac Games. Hey, Trevor, if I have the all-in bundle and you add more add-ons, are they added automatically? Or do we have to add them, or will the pledge be redone? As far as I know, and maybe you can correct me, Carson, when you buy the all-in bundle, you automatically get everything. Everything, all the stuff, anything that's unlocked, everything. So it's literally all in. So I don't think you have to add on anything specific at the end. I'm myself am. It's my first Kickstarter, guys. So if you ask a bunch of technical questions, especially you Kickstarter vets out there, I might not be able to answer that. That's not my department. I'm just the creator of the game. So that's why Carson's on here. He's going to try and help me answer any specific Kickstarter related questions, but I might not know the answer. I'm here to make the game. They're here to help me bring it to you through this tool of Kickstarter. Okay. Elaine says, have you tried playing the game with the Mythic GM emulator specifically tuned for this game? Well, yeah, that's what Season 4 is. If you go to Me, Myself, and I, you'll see me developing the game as I go, playing the game using the Mythic GM emulator. Oh, Nathan Culver just wandered into this channel. I don't know anything about your game, so what is your pitch for this game? Well, you can go to the Kickstarter page and get everything there. That will give you a big idea about what's going on here. Okay. Exclusive. M. Khan gives me a little tip. Thank you very much for that. Much obliged. Much appreciated. Exclusive. How are the solo rules for the Broken Empire's RPG different from normal Mythic? Mainly the tables, or are there other special mechanics? There are differences, but I can't tell you a lot about it because we haven't written them yet. We technically have not yet unlocked the special solo component. Not that it has anything to do with it. We are in the process of writing them right now, but I can't really address the solo rules until all of the main rules are set in stone, and they're not there yet. They're almost there, like I said, like 90%. But I did have a conversation with Tana Pigeon yesterday about the solo rules, so it's in the works, and we're trying to make the solo rules very specific to the Broken Empire's game. So it's not just a reprint of the Mythic GM emulator. There's specific things in there that are going to be custom just for this game. Okay. Dead Marsh. Oh, I just lost my place. I lost my place. I always lost my place. Okay. Sorry, guys. This is going to happen a lot as I'm going up. Trying to find my spot here. Dead Marsh. My one pressing question was strongholds. Is there a chance there will be stronghold rules, as that's a great collective motivator for players who also want more immersion in the world? Yeah, I love stronghold rules. Originally, I was going to put them in the core book. I ran out of time and space. So, no, there will not be stronghold rules in the core book. However, that is definitely on the menu for a future supplement. So that is also in my mind. I share your excitement for such things. Okay. Godwin Gear. I'm most intrigued by the magic system. What would an example of putting together a spell or two look like mechanically? Can it be done quickly on the fly? It can be done quickly on the fly once you've done it a couple times. Universally, in the play tests, the spellcasters have looked at what they have to do, and they've been immediately intimidated, but then they go through it once and then twice, and by the third spell, they got it. So there's not much to it, but it does require knowledge of how it works. Again, it's not rocket science here. But basically how it works is the magic system is slightly different from the core mechanic in that it deals with success levels and how you roll slightly differently. Now, everything I'm about to say, too, this is all in development still. So don't take this as written in stone because it could be altered. But the main gist of it's going to be the same. Here's how it works. I want to do a thing with magic. Well, first of all, I'm trained in certain binds and strands. Binds and strands are verbs and nouns, right? Control, fire, change, thought, destroy, body, right? I'm not going to be trained in everything. I'm going to be trained in a few specific things. I can learn anything over the course of time, but that is something that spellweavers spend lifetimes doing, right? So there's kind of schools of magic, what they call, oh boy, the name is completely blanking on my own term. Convocation. Convocation is like a school of magic. So you are trained in certain things. So when you want to approach a situation magically, the first thing you do is you go, okay, how can I use my particular combination of skills to achieve an effect? And what is that effect? That's obviously going to be context-based. So if I'm trying to, charm someone, let's say, okay, I might do it by saying I want to use control thought. That's the most obvious one. But there are other ways of doing it, right? It all depends on you and your approach. However, that approach is going to set the magnitude. The magnitude is how offensive to reality that power is. If you are doing a gross and obvious display of magical power, the weave is going to fight back, which means that the magnitude is going to be higher. So the more subtle you are with your power, the less the magnitude's going to fight you, right? So you decide, you explain what you're going to do, you describe what you're going to do. We pick the bind and strand combination, which sets your skill. You literally take the two skill values, you put them together. And we assign a magnitude between 0 and 4. Then you have to cost the spell out. You have to determine, and again, this is the part that takes 1 or 2 castings to figure out, but once you get it, it's easy. You determine the target, you determine the range, you determine the duration, and you determine the potency. And you also can determine the whelm, which is if there's any penalty to the target's defense, because every target has a resistance to magic. The whelm is something you can do to ensure that that target has a lessened resistance to it. And then for certain spells, there's sense as well, like sight, hearing, that kind of stuff. So you look at that, and based on the little chart, you know how many SLs you need to achieve in order to have the spell work controlled, okay? So let's say the spell is 9 SLs, okay? And you've got a skill, you put them together, and maybe your combined skill is 80. You think, well, how can I get 9 SLs on 80? Well, there's a number of ways. When you roll, you want to obviously roll your skill or less, but you want to roll high, like everything else, right? So let's say you rolled 26 on 80. You succeed. That means the spell is going to work. However, you're short SLs. You've only rolled 2. Now, maybe you have expertise or you have magical threads that increase your SLs, all that stuff, but let's assume you don't, okay? You've rolled 2, but you need 9, okay? You are short by 7 SLs. Now, the spell still works. However, because you're short 7 SLs, now you have to roll on the weave reaction table based on the magnitude of that spell. It's a d20 plus your weave reaction modifier, which is the difference between what you got and what you need. In this case, plus 7. d20 plus 7, higher is worse. You think, oh my God, that's terrible. Every spell's a fumble. Well, that's not true. First of all, not every weave reaction is bad, although most of them are. Second of all, that's where resolve comes into it. As a spellcaster, as a spell weaver, not as a priest, they're different. But as a spell weaver, you can expend your own resolve, your own force of will to close the gap, however much you want. You can close the gap all the way if you want. If you have 7 resolve to spend, you can spend that, and now you've got your weave reaction modifier to 0, and as long as it's a weave 1 to 3 spell, you don't have to roll on the table. If you roll a magnitude 1 to 3 spell. If you roll a magnitude 4 spell, you always roll on the table regardless, because it's so offensive to the weave's definitely going to react. But Your goal as a spellweaver is to ensure that you're either not rolling on that table at all, or if you have to, you want to roll with as small a modifier as possible. And that's where resolve comes into it. So the weave reactions are myriad and varied, but they're not all bad. If you roll low enough, you can actually produce magical threads. Literal pieces of the weave that appear in existence, which are basically like magic items you can use. So it's not always bad to roll on the weave reaction table. That's essentially how it works. Priests are a little different, but I'll talk about them some other time. Okay, where are we here? Hobbitmonger, what are your thoughts on new additions for existing games in general, particularly the potential effects on the community? That's a very broad question. New additions for existing games? Well, I mean, there's a million reasons why people release new editions. Presumably, it's because they've updated the rules significantly, something that an errata document can't do. I can't really speak to that, though. Everybody's got different reasons for it. So, and I've never released a game before, so I've never released a second edition either. So I can't really ask or answer that question. Okay, where are we here? MCon. Congrats on the huge success, Trevor. Do you have any details you can share on your collaborations with Tana and Sean? Yeah, I just had a conversation with Tana yesterday about the specific solo tools and how to address solo play. I'm going to say this in all honesty. The game as it is right now is on the simulationist side, which means it's complex, which means it's not typically a good fit for solo play. It's not. Hornmaster is my favorite game in the world, but I would never play it solo. It's too complex. There's too many bells. There's too many moving parts. So our goal is to create solo tools for this game that reduce the complexity, but not so much that now you're asking, why am I playing the Broken Empires at all? For example, some of the complexity in combat is about hit locations, right? Or wound effects. So you think, okay, well, that's a complex thing. Maybe we can reduce that. Maybe there's no more hit locations. Okay, we could. But if you're gaining speed, you're losing detail. And if that's the case, you got to ask yourself, if I've lost the thing that makes combat interesting to me, then why am I even playing this game? Why don't I just go play some narrativist game? Right? If your number one concern is, I want to make, I want to tell a story about a character, then I got news for you. You don't actually need role-playing game mechanics at all. You can just do that with an oracle. But for me, when I play solo, I'm not interested in experiencing the narrative of a character. I'm interested in playing that game. When I did Savage Worlds in Season 1, I was interested in playing Savage Worlds. I wanted to play Savage Worlds. And I wanted to do it solo. So I attached the emulator, right? So right now, as the game exists, it's difficult to play solo because it's not impossible. I do it on the channel, right? You could totally do it. You just have to be organized, right? I'm trying to provide tools, and this is what I'm working with Sean and Tana on. Trying to provide tools that lessen we'll call it the burden of running a detailed simulationist game solo without reducing the complexity to the point where you ask yourself, what's the point of playing this game in the first place? And that is a fine line. And it's difficult. It's difficult. Not going to lie. So that's where we're at. I mean, coming up with detailed and custom tables and oracles for the game, that's the easy part. The hard part is specific tools and advice on how to play this game solo. And I know there's a lot of you out there that are looking forward to that. And that's great. And we're doing our best to give you what you want. But understand, as I have said from the very beginning, this game is not and never has been intended specifically for solo play. It was always assumed that this game was going to be played with people. So the fact that so many of you are solo players and you wanted this, I said, well, I can't just pretend you don't exist. So that's why I'm working with Tana and Sean on that. But I just want to be 100% honest with you guys. 100%. So you know exactly where I'm at and where I'm coming from. Okay. All right. Nisgard, funded in 5 minutes. Congrats, man. That's really awesome. Yeah, it's very surprising to us. We were over the moon about that. Jehoa, I'm going to butcher your name. Hoa Kartaxo. Howdy. How are the travel rules applied if the party has more than 3 characters or less? Can 2 characters have the same role? So the answer is no, two characters can't have the same role, but if there's more characters, they can help. If there's fewer characters, one person's going to have to take on multiple roles, and that's at a penalty. But there are ways to mitigate that. So the answer is yes. Yes to both. Okay. Shatshar Ashkenazi, are there actions that you can take during your opponent's turn besides dodging, parrying, or blocking, a sort of reactive actions, things like Counter-Strike or Dispel Magic, Block Magic? Yes. Yes. But it's based on the outcome of your roll. If you are actively parrying, then if you beat your opponent by 5 SLs, you can riposte, which is a free attack, immediate attack, pow. If you're dodging and you beat your opponent by 5 SLs, and again, that's a lot, right? Then you can withdraw without penalty. You can't riposte if you're dodging, only if you're parrying, right? Only if you're actively engaged in the melee. There is things called counterspells. Counterspells act as a defense. Mostly what they do is that they help boost your defense to that spell coming in, but it's considered a defense. Yes, the answer is yes, but I don't get too complex with that because, again, sim light. Simulation, light. Simulation, pull it back. Complex rules, pull it back. So there's that. Okay. Henrik S. Tornblom, if I understand it correctly, characters get XP for pursuing their goals. But are there any group goals and group XP? There absolutely are. That is a huge component of your XP growth, is working together with the rest of the party on shared goals. Absolutely there are. Jacob Croft, any plans on adding more races in the future or a system to craft custom races ourselves? There are, and I don't want to say anything more about that because they might be stretch goals. I don't know. You never know. All right, where are we here? Adalada. In Season 4, we have seen a damage spell from Vale, first dealing with if it hits, and then an additional roll for damage. Don't you want to reduce like that for standard combat? There's no longer, at this point, a damage roll for magic. That is changed. That's different. When you watch stuff in Season 4, understand that you are seeing a developing game, so nothing that you see on any one episode is necessarily the game in its current form. And I said that from the beginning. I'm doing Season 4 as a developmental tool so that you can see the evolution of the game. So I'm glad you're watching, but don't think that what you're seeing is the final rule because it's not necessarily. Some of the rules are still the same, but some of them have changed drastically, right? Okay. Dorduib, again, I'm butchering names. Hi, Trevor. I backed the physical copy of the game, book plus starter set. Woohoo! Thank you. Hope there aren't any problems in shipping to Israel. Yeah, me neither. Shouldn't be. Again, I don't control shipping. That's all with like BackerKit and Fulfill Right and stuff. But they do say anywhere in the world besides, certain places. I don't think Israel's on the no-go list. It shouldn't be. You guys are having a hell of a time right now, but I wish you all the best, certainly. So I hope so. I hope that there's no issues. If there is, we'll try and find a way to handle your situation. Mercurius Aulicus. I'm in Australia, so the postal rates are diabolical. They absolutely are. They're brutal. Sorry, mate. Nothing we can do about that, I'm afraid. Just really sucks to be down under right now. Okay, where are we? Thuiduns. Channel member, but my players are all over the place, so I need digital. Yeah, that is a very common thing. I love books, but I use books all the time. But I also have groups in other cities, so we play both, right? We use VTTs and all that kind of stuff. So yes, can you play the game Theater of the Mind? Yes, you can. This game doesn't require a battle mat. It doesn't require minis, anything like that. However, in my long years of experience, I have found, regardless of the game, regardless of the genre, regardless of anything, if you have typically a combat situation, it always helps to have relative positioning available at a glance. That's it. You can draw on a scratch pad and say, okay, you're basically here, and the enemy's basically here, and here's a tree. What do? You don't have to count squares. You don't have to do that stuff. But relative positioning is very important, and I'll tell you why. Because, little story from my past, little embarrassing story from my past. When I was in middle school, junior high, for those of you in Canada, I was running a game. And we weren't using any kind of relative positioning. We weren't using battle mats. We weren't using it was all theater of the mind. And I described how there was this, I think it was this giant bear coming out of a cave. And I described it as being like 200 feet away. And then we got lost in the role playing. And then I said, and then the bear attacks. And all the players said, is he got rubber arms? I said, what? They said, he's 200 feet away. And so from that day on, this meme was this bear coming out and going, bang, like, Mr. Fantastic, and smacking them with his paws from 200 feet away. And from that point on, I never again played purely theater of the mind. There was always some sort of rough representation of where everybody was in relation to each other. So, yes, you can play theater of the mind, but I would never, ever, ever recommend it for any game. Because otherwise, them rubber-armed bears come at you. Rangdo. Dave Thamavor mentioned that the social combat at the climax of his playthrough was very tense. Will we get to see an example of play, if not from that game, but from another one? Yeah, that is kind of a really good example that we did in that video. I may release that full video to you. I'm kind of hesitant to do it because, again, it's months old, so a lot of the rules are out of date. The core ideas are still there, but some things hadn't been fully developed yet, so some parts feel a little clunky and stuff. But I might do that. I'm going to try and give you as much as I can without, giving away the store, so to speak, or showing how the sausage is made entirely, because you haven't seen the sausage yet. I want to give you the sausage before you see how it's made. Okay. Lee B. Oh, I get this question a lot. Question about Me, Myself, and I, the series. Will Broken Empires RPG be the house game going forward, or will you continue to feature different RPGs each season? God, I don't even want to think about other seasons right now. That's just an exhausting thought. But I will say that it will not be any kind of house system. There's too many games out there I love. There's too many games to play. I couldn't possibly do myself the disservice of only ever playing one game, even if it's my own. So I will continue to play my own game and run my own game and develop my own game. And if there's a big enough audience, which it seems like there might be now, to develop more stuff. We've got stuff in the works, too, for future Kickstarters. We've got all kinds of cool stuff in the works. But we wanted to wait until we see how we do at the end of October to see if it's viable. It's looking good, but, only time will tell. All right. Stephen Burnett. I know this is a question that requires a dense answer. But could you give us examples of weapon types and combat qualities like reach, impact, parrying? It is a dense answer that I would have to give, but I will tell you this. The game isn't like a super weapon porn game, but there is aspects of it. So there is a difference between a broadsword and a longsword. There is a difference between a one-handed spear that you would use as shield and a two-handed spear. There is reach factors, for example, which gives specific things. There are weapons that make certain combat maneuvers easier or harder. For example, with a rapier, it's easier and cheaper to choose location because it's very fast. Or a dagger is very fast, very easy to choose location, but it doesn't do a lot of damage. Other weapons, big two-handed weapons, some of them, it's easier to knock somebody prone with them, but much harder to circumvent a shield, right? So all of that is part of it. Without getting too crazy complex. That's my whole goal, right? Again, I want to provide these details, but not so much that you're always looking stuff up, because that's no good. And that kind of ties in with the character sheet. Everything you need should be on the character sheet. There should be no need for a player to ever look at any place except their character sheet. Everything they need should be right there. That's our goal. And it's going pretty good so far. Going pretty good so far. Okay. All right, I'm falling behind. For those of you who are just joining us, thank you. Welcome. Thank you for your support. We're really excited to have you all here. Okay, guys. Where are we, guys? All right. Himoru Gentoku, how does the NPC stat look? How does the NPC stat look like, sir? Sir's my father. Is it hard to prepare NPC stats? We are currently designing the NPC stat blocks to accommodate this exact thing. We want to make sure that NPC stat blocks are easy to look at and quick to reference, while not dumbing it down too much, because, this is a simulation, this game. We want to keep the details again, it's that fine line, right? How much does the GM need to know about a given monster in order to make it applicable to the player's abilities for what they want to do? For example, you would need to know the particular lethality level in a bandit's legs. Why? Because if the player chooses location and hits him in the leg, he could do damage that could cause that bandit to fall prone. The player specifically did that in order to cause that bandit to fall prone. So you can't ignore the rules about that. But at the same time, you can't have every bandit having a full stat block like it's a player character either. So there are ways to do it, and we're refining, always refining. But that's certainly what we have in mind. We want to make it easy to GM as much as possible. And if you're playing solo, we want to make it easy to reference things. But again, guys, it's a complex game. There's going to be complexities. If you want to play a super reduced and simple and fast, super fast moving game, there's a million OSR games. This is not going to be the one. But we are trying to make it as smooth as possible. Okay. Trying to something new here. Seeker's Hollow says, hey, we have the same headphones. Good, they're good stuff. All right. Planar Wanderer, I play almost exclusively online. You're not alone. So I picked the digital bundle, and if it unlocks on time, I will buy the Foundry Autumn. Awesome! Well, I hope it does unlock, and I hope we can accommodate you, because there are so many people that are kind of forced to play online, too. Or just chose to because of, I've got friends in Vancouver, and they all live in the city, but they all play via VTT, because they don't want to take the time to drive the, half an hour. And I'm like, do you know what you're doing? If I lived among you, I would be driving every night to play a game in person. But that's all right. That's their choice. All right. Microdude, channel member. I think a new channel member. I don't recognize your name, Microdude. Looks like a good bit of undescribed and empty space. Oh, you're talking about the map, I'm presuming. Are you looking to describe and fill in the space, or giving tips to GMs to fill in on the campaign? So there will be a fairly cool setting section in the book. That said, my model for the setting is first edition gray box Forgotten Realms. What does that mean? It means I want to give you a big geographical space with rough strokes, broad strokes about each area, so that you can fill it in yourself. Because I want everybody's Broken Empires to be their Broken Empires, much in the way that Harn does it. Harn says, we are going to give you all this incredible detailed history up to a certain point, and we're never going to publish anything that takes place past that point. Why do they do that? So that nothing they publish interferes with your personal timeline with your campaign. And I think that's really great. I think that's really considerate of them to do. So I'm kind of going along that route now as well. So take Harn, that idea of Harn, and the idea of the gray box Forgotten Realms, and you're going to have... I want to give you enough detail to set a frame of reference so that you know, oh, Angevin is kind of like 12th century France. Got it. The Red Waste and Ansharir. Oh, that's kind of like Arabia meets ancient Egypt. Okay, I got it. And then there's going to be special differences in those cultures because they're not Earth cultures, but they're referencing the frame of reference. So you immediately get a sense of the flavor. But yeah, I want to give enough detail so that you have something to build on, but not so much that it traps you into something if you don't like it, right? Okay. And now I'm going to take a pause to drink from this product that is absolutely not sponsoring this stream. All right. Shachar Ashkenazi, any chance to get mass combat rules as a future stretch goal? Well, it is in my head. I will tell you that. And I do have mass combat rules. I will tell you that. Okay. JP, I think I like this. Question, I'm an OSR and 5e kind of guy. Have you considered that Simlight is exactly the kind of intro folks like me would see as an intro into the simulationist world? It is, for me, for sure. Well, that is music to my ears, my friend, because that is exactly what I'm trying to provide. I am trying to provide OSR and 5e players who may be looking for something different, a game that scratches a bunch of detail itches without being so complex as to be intimidating. That's my goal. I'm so pleased to have you here. If you're a 5e guy and you're coming on board this, that is like manna from heaven. That is amazing. So much of my channel is dedicated to highlighting games that are not Dungeons & Dragons. Not because I have anything particularly against D&D. All right, let's face it, I have many years of grievances against D&D. But not principally because of that, but because so many new D&D players that especially came into the game because of Critical Role or because of the pandemic, they just don't know that other games exist, and I want to dispel them of that illusion. Not just for me, for all the other independent creators out there that have made these incredible games that are specifically tailored to do these cool things. You know, I hear 5e players saying, I really want to do a sci-fi game. How can I make 5e do it? The answer is don't. Go play Traveler or Stars Without Number or. There's so many options. And I want to, I do a series on my channel called Sage's Library, and it's all about talking about these old games and not so old games that do everything that, isn't D&D. So I'm so glad you're here. That's fantastic. Bjorn Eric Lowe, how does Broken Empires handle weapon balance? Ooh, I have worked very hard on that one. First of all, balance in a game I think is overrated. I know, I can hear the pitchforks coming out now. I think balance in a game is overrated. That said, there have to be certain things that are balanced. Otherwise, there's going to be obvious exploits. I worked very hard to make sure that there isn't obvious weapon exploits like, well, of course you always take the two-handed sword, or of course you always take this or that. There are advantages and disadvantages to each thing. That said, nothing really beats a good old sword and shield, or spear and shield, if you know how to use them. Anyway, okay. I'm getting lots of tips here from you guys. This is amazing. Thank you. That was unasked for, but deeply appreciated. Thank you, all my friends. Tim H. Hello, Trevor, and thank you for creating something that I think really takes risks in the current TTRG place. What does that mean? Am I about to be attacked? No, I think I know what you mean, and I appreciate the compliment. Thank you. Okay. Nisgard says, you kids just wait and see. Tablets will be useless in the post-apocalypse when we'll all be playing RPGs around campfires. Yeah, you're damn right it will. Break out them wooden clackers we call dice. There you go. Okay. Dorduib, will we be able to play with your Mythic Gym emulator with a different game system? Do you mean, will you be able to take the specific Broken Empires tables from the Broken Empires and use them with any other game? Theoretically, you can, but there's going to be things in those tables that are very specific to the Broken Empire, so you'd be better off using just the main emulator, I would imagine. Okay. Justice for Carlos. No comment. All right. Agile Monk says, thumbs up to Schools of Magic. Good. I'm glad you like it. Astrolama, what are your principles about designing the setting? Two big ones. Frame of reference, as I've already talked about, and internal consistency. I don't care how high or low magic or fantasy your world is. It's got to have a frame of reference, and it's got to have internal consistency. What does that mean? Frame of reference means, as a player, I want to get a rough sense of the atmosphere of the world, of the area of the world that I'm in. In the Broken Empires, when you're in Angouvar, it's going to feel a lot like it could be 9th to 12th century France. The names are all vaguely French. The style of dress is all described that way. The kind of political system, the feudal system, it's very, very similar to that. But it is not France. It is only a frame of reference. There are many differences about that. For example, there's monsters, for one thing, and magic. But that leads into internal consistency. Any fantasy world, especially fantasy worlds, have to have internal consistency. And what do I mean by that? I mean that the rules of the world, the laws of physics, if you will, have to be identifiable by the players. They don't have to be the same as Earth's. You could have a fantasy world where the water runs uphill. You could. But it has to be internally consistent. The players have to know, in this world, water runs uphill. They have to know that. And they have to know that every time they see water, it's going to run uphill. Why? Because if you keep changing it on them, it means one of two things. One, the world is in chaotic flux, which could be cool if you're playing a Michael Moorcock setting. Or two, you're lazy in your design. And now the players can't make meaningful decisions because the world keeps changing. It's like pulling the rug out from underneath them. So for me, frame of reference and internal consistency are the two huge things in any world, in any fantasy game world. And again, that could be high fantasy, low fantasy, it doesn't matter. As long as you're consistent and as long as you provide enough consistent information that the players can always make meaningful decisions so that they know what they're getting into, then you'll be golden. All right. Slit518. Question, I have only seen a brief interview with you about this game. Will this game have classes, or is it all skills that define your character? There are no classes and no levels and no hit points in this game. There are all skills and also attributes and also expertise and also talents, but no classes. There are previous careers. Basically what those are when you're developing your character, when you're making your character, everybody comes from somewhere. So you have a culture, you have life events, and you have a previous career. That previous career is essentially skill packages, essentially. That's what that is. But once you start play, you can develop your character however you want. If you want to be Conan but who casts spells, you can do that. It's not always going to be easy, but you can do that. I always found for me classes were too defining. And I know why they exist, right? Niche protection, also an easy access point to games. I'm a cleric. I know what that means. I can do this, and this is my limited scope of powers, and it's all very useful. But for me, having played games like RuneQuest, when I first found RuneQuest back in the early 80s, I was like, oh, yeah, who needs classes? I can make my character whatever I want. Great. Love it. Okay, Dog. Hi, Trevor. I wanted to ask, are you still thinking of either letting other people make third-party content for the game? Okay, people ask me this all the time. I'm going to give you my answer right now. Will there be a third-party license for the Broken Empires? The answer is not yet. Not now. I need to make sure that I control the property first. So I want to make sure that what I'm releasing is within the purview of my intentions. Now, if the game is super successful and super popular, then we'll talk. Then we'll see. Because I can always add a license later, right? It can be done. But for now, no. There will not be a third-party license. But if you are one of those people like Black Lodge Games that are super interested in making things for this game, keep your eyes to the sky. Keep your eyes on the stars, because that day may come, depending on how the game succeeds. And so far, it's looking pretty good. So there's a good hope for that. But for the moment, to answer that question, flat out, no, there will not be for the moment. It is really hot in here. I gotta turn on some AC. Whew, lordy, loo, it sure is hot down here in the south. Oh, that's why. I should probably turn it on. Okay, here we go. Chopsticks. Thank you, sir. Your boy will be buying the book soon. Awesome. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Sir, ma'am, not even sure. Doesn't matter. Thank you. Okay. Googler, question. Wounds kind of seem indistinguishable from hit points to me. I've watched all your stuff, so I understand spending SLs to get effects. In what way does a wound function differently from HP? Oh, that's a great question. Glad you asked it. They have nothing to do with each other. Hit points are abstractions, pure abstractions. They mean nothing. All they are in most games, most OSR-style games, all they are, it's a bag of points that you need to get through until you kill the enemy. I hate that because I want an immediate effect of my attack if it's successful. If I stab you in the right arm, I want that to have a possible effect, not a guaranteed, but a possible effect. And like you point out, there's SL spends you can make, right? Like if I if I get a good hit in your right arm, I can spend SLs on a combat maneuver to disarm you. So that's cool. But what the wounds do is A, it makes it scary to get hit. B, it makes healing awesome and infection a real thing, which is, I love it. But C, it gives an immediate effect that tells you you're making progress against your enemy and you don't have to kill them to defeat them. That's a big design choice in this game. There are many ways to win a fight. You do not have to reduce your enemy to death in order to win. Many ways. You could incapacitate them, you could break their morale, you could compel their surrender, you could put them into a position where they literally cannot fight anymore, or you could kill them. To me, that's really important because it gives the players more options to deal with their enemies based on the context. Because sometimes you don't want to kill your enemy. What if you're on a capture mission? Then you don't want to kill them, right? So there's many reasons. So there's a huge difference between wounds and hit points. So I hope that answers your question. Also, just to say, too, I don't mean that in a disparaging way. If you're someone who plays D&D and you love your hit points, awesome. Great. Congratulations. I'm glad you found your game. It's just for me, I've always found them dissatisfying. Okay, Knight Calum looks super good, or super looks good, though I'm a little intimidated by what seems to be a lot of moving parts. Might be just because I'm used to 5e, Pathfinder 2, Shadow Dark, and OSE. Okay, thank you for this comment. So great. I understand, totally. When you look at my game without actually looking at my game, because no one's actually seen the rules in their real form yet, it can be intimidating. But if you are a Pathfinder 2e player, brother, my game has got way fewer rules. Way fewer rules. Pathfinder 2 is a rules-heavy game. And now, I know a lot of you may disagree with me. That's okay. You're right. But this is my stream. So, therefore, Pathfinder 2 is a rules-heavy game. My game is not a rules-heavy game. My game isn't even crunchy. Crunchy specifically means a lot of math. There's not a lot of math in my game. There's some, but arguably less than Pathfinder. Because Pathfinder, first of all, there's rules for everything. You want to walk and chew gum in Pathfinder? Well, you need a 3rd level feat to do that, and it takes 2 of your action points. So, if you can play Pathfinder 2, you can play this game. It's different. It's a completely different experience. It's complex. It's complex in totally different ways than Pathfinder is. But you could play it. Like, don't be intimidated by it. It is different, though. It is totally different. If you're unused to games that have specific wounds or have hit locations or have real choices after the roll, right? That's weird until you get used to it. And then maybe you never go back. Like I will never go back now. Like, I love it. Mercurius Alicuis, I'm just whatever. Thank you, mate, for your $2. Will your magic have misfire or corruption rules? That's what the weave reactions are. If you cast a spell and you don't cover the spread, you're going to incur a weave reaction. What that means is most of the time spellcasters have, depending how they handle themselves, between 3 and 4. Well, it depends. I don't even want to say that. But yeah, okay, just as a blanket assessment, I'll say that in a fight, in a combat, okay, combats don't take very long. This is not a game where you have 10-round combats, typically speaking. Most combats we have found are over between 2 and maybe 5 rounds, like 5 at the most. So within that 5-round max, let's say, a spellcaster reasonably can get off 3 good spells before, well, maybe it's time to back off. But it depends, right? It depends. Depends on the role, depends on the context, depends on how they fabricate the spell, lots of stuff. But yes, the weave reactions can be particularly brutal. Thwedens, can you make a spell that creates a lich? No. Well, I shouldn't say no. I will tell you that the magic system, because it's freeform, because it is designed to handle anything you can think of except that which goes against the law of limitation. All I can do is give you general guidelines and general formulas that work in general situations that cover most of your needs. There are going to be times when you're at your table and you go, I want to do this, and there isn't an exact rule for how that's going to work. At that moment, it's up to you to wing it, to go, well, you know what? Based on the other guidelines, I think this is a fair assessment. We're doing our best to give you as many guidelines as we can so that you will always make a choice that more or less falls within, non-breaking range. But I don't know what every table in the world is going to do. I don't know what every possible permutation of a spell is going to be. And there's no way I can know that. All I can give you is, this is what works most of the time. And here's some thoughts on how to adjust that, right? So, yes. And if that means that in your game you can't create a lich, then guess what? That goes in the law of limitations. No, you can't create a lich. Right now, it is possible to make yourself a lich. How do we know that? Because in Season 4, there's a lich. Even though he's a failed lich. All right. Oh, Ernesto Carrera, you deserve everything good. You're great for the community. Thank you. Thank you, my friend. Nathan Culver wants to hear about priests. We will get to priests. JFMD, thank you for the $5, my friend. Glad to have purchased and backed this. Will there be beta rules released so we can see some of the mechanics prior to official release? There will not be beta rules released because I am an artist, as I said, and I do not want to release my art until it is ready for the eyes of my patrons. That said, I will be releasing certain things and doing more talks like this where I talk about specifics. But as soon as we send that book to the printers, all of you backers get your PDFs. So you will get it way before anybody else. And I have a team of editors and proofreaders and playtesters all working very hard to make sure that there aren't any glaring errors. There's going to be errors in the book. There's always errors in the book. There's no way around that. But we're trying to make sure there's as few as possible, because there's nothing worse than getting a book and it's filled with errata that you wait a minute, this example doesn't match the rule. Oh, I hate that. That's a massive pet peeve of mine. You read the rule and then the example right below it is wrong. Ooh, I hate that. So we're trying really hard to make sure that doesn't happen. Oh, Nathan, will you eventually release a character creation app? We're kind of working on it. Maybe another stretch goal. We'll see. Jay Bacata, where does the no class stats or levels come from? 40 years of experience. That sounds interesting, but how does it work? Could you please talk about that? If you're coming from a D&D background, that may sound alien, but if you're coming from a RuneQuest background, it will not sound alien at all. In fact, if you play Mithras is RuneQuest 6, essentially. Mithras is entirely skill-based, but still has stats. I looked at Mithras and went, I love Mithras, by the way, for the record, but Mithras is just that much too complex for me. But I looked at it and went, wait a minute, Mithras has stats, but the only time you ever really use stats is when you craft your skills at character creation, so why do you need them? And so I realized in my game, skills do everything that you might expect a stat to do. There's nothing a skill can't do that there's nothing a skill can't do that a stat could also do. So I was like, this is superfluous. we don't need it. So it's just a product of 40 years of playing a bazillion different games that I just looked at all these different combinations. When I like this, I like this, I like this. How do I make those work together? Oh, great. Classless, levelless, statless. Skills. Huzzah. And talents, which are kind of like feats, right? Except they're not as crazy as a lot of feats get. They're very, very specific things. Okay. There was a question from the Discord that I wanted to see if I can remember. Let me see if I can find it here, guys. Oh boy, where was it? Somebody said that they couldn't be here. I'm never going to find this. Yeah, somebody said they couldn't be here, but they had a question. It was a really good one, and I can't find it now. Damn it. I knew I should have written it down. It's not like I have anything else to do. Okay. Well, I don't know. Carson, see if you can find what they're asking. I should probably look to see what you're asking me here. Yeah, let's look at the questions you've got here. So, question. I think I answered that one already. I think I answered that one. Answered that one. Cool. Thank you, Carson. Yes. Okay. All right. Where are we now? Shonen MC, are all skills available to all characters, or do they get them from their life path like in Traveler? Both. Everybody's going to have some skill in all skills, but it might not be much. It's all dependent on your character creation. So there's a life event system. It's not a hugely detailed life path system like in Traveler. That's a great system, by the way. I love it. I love life paths. I love it in Burning Wheel. I love it in Traveler. I love it in all those games. But there isn't a specific life path system. The character creation system is it's a little bit of Traveler with a little bit of RuneQuest and some Mithras, even though Mithras is just later RuneQuest. So there's stuff in there. And there's also some narrativist stuff in there too with life events. You use those life events not only to increase your skills, but also to combine your future goals and your present goals with the rest of the party as well, to sort of give you a reason for being together. So it does a similar thing as the Traveler life path in some ways. Jay Estrada, not sure if this has been answered yet. If crits happen on doubles and 0 is the hit location on the head, how is a crit to the head to happen ever? The answer is it doesn't naturally. However, one of the things you can do quite easily, depending on the weapon, is choose location. So if you get a good hit, a crit, that means you get +3 SLs. You're probably going to beat your opponent, but maybe not. Depends if they rolled awesome too. There's no guarantee. That's why we roll dice. But it means that a crit to the head, because it's so devastating, that the only way it really happens is if you choose location to it. Now, I shouldn't say the only way. That's not actually true. Because a crit is also rolling your exact skill. So if your skill is 30 and you roll a 30, you just crit it to the head. but obviously that's very rare. That's going to be very rare. However, as I said, choose location is one of those very valuable things that you can crit to the head. But what crit really does is it allows you to choose a combat maneuver called bypass armor, which is a big deal. Okay, question from Discord, Trevor. Oh, yeah, this is a good one. Thank you, Carson. The Broken Empires will use mainly a D100. Will the target numbers offset or mitigate the linear and thus swingy output of a single die? Or are the target numbers also linear? Or do you feel that the swinginess is an intended feature? Okay, this is a great question. And this is something that I worked on very hard. Here's the deal. Follow me here. We're getting into mechanics now. It's a D100 system, but it is roll under, but high. It's blackjack. It's not whether you roll under and therefore you succeed. It is how well do you succeed. A lot of the times, you're rolling against a difficulty of 1, which means you need 1 success level, which means no matter what your skill is, if you roll your skill or under, you succeed. Hooray! But in an opposed roll situation, you need to get more success levels than the other guy or the other object or thing or force, right? So just because I have a skill of 90 does not guarantee that I'm going to win that exchange. I could roll a 2 and get 1 success level because 1 is always the minimum. Well, that's a terrible roll, right? What's the point of having a 90 if it's crazy swingy? And the answer is yes, it's crazy swingy because that's the chaos of combat. However, there are ways to mitigate that. There's something in the game called expertise. There's also, well, I'll talk about expertise first. So expertise is stuff you can buy. It's kind of like a feat, right? It's kind of like it's called a specialty, right? There's specialties in the game. They're expertise and they're talents. Talents are very specific things you can do in very specific situations. Expertise is the ability to increase your success levels if you succeeded. So if I have an expertise of 1 and I have a skill of 70 and I roll 23, I got 2 SLs, but I have expertise of 1, which means I have 3 SLs. It helps you on the bottom end. It makes sure that you will always have a minimum success level. But there's also bonuses and penalties to skills that affect you on the top level. So this is where Resolve comes in. Resolve can be spent by anybody as favor. And favor is basically you can spend up to 3 points of favor or Resolve in this case. Same thing. You can spend up to 3 points to affect a roll of yours. You can either do it before or after or a combination, but you can only do 3. And 3 points is a lot to spend on a roll. But if you spend Resolve before a roll, for every point you spend on it, you get plus 10 to that skill. So if my skill is 30 and I spend 1 point of Resolve, I now have a 40% chance of success. That tells me nothing about my minimum level of success because I don't know what I'm going to roll. On the other hand, I can spend Resolve on a successful roll to add, essentially, expertise, to add SLs. So if I have a skill of 70 and I rolled 23, I can spend up to 3 Resolve to make that 2 SLs a 5 SL. Or I can have a combination. Let's say I have a skill of 50 and I say I want to spend 1 point of Resolve before the roll. And I roll, and so now I'm rolling on 60 and I roll 23. At that point, I can spend 2 more Resolve to increase those SLs if I want. But remember, Resolve is precious, so you can't just keep doing this every time. That's how that works. So, yes, it is swingy. However, there are things you can do to mitigate that. The swinginess is part of the design. It's a feature, not a bug, because the dice represent the chaos of the universe. And that's why we roll them. We don't know what's going to happen. But if you have a high skill, that gives you a much greater potential to have way more success levels. Remember, too, that if you get 7 success levels in this game, that's devastating. That is an incredible victory. If that's in a fight, if you get a net 7 success levels against your opponent, that fight's probably over. Like, it's not necessarily, it depends. Depends on their defense and their armor and all of the other stuff and their toughness and all that stuff. But 7 SL, that's a big, big hit. So that's how that works. So yes, it is swingy on purpose, and there's ways to mitigate that through internal character resources of Resolve as well as expertise. Awesome question. Thank you for answering or asking it. All right, where are we? Let us go back. Let us go back. Boy, there's lots here. Oh, there's lots, guys. Thank you so much. Oh, there's 211 of you on here right now. Amazing. Okay. Okay. Alex Jeffries, a good test for a simulation game is how it handles gravity. How is falling handled in the rules? Don't fall from a great height. If you do, you'll take a nasty wound that could kill you. That's how it's handled. Nabil Zuikiri, how easy is it to separate the setting from the rules? I'm an avid home brewer, I understand, who prefers to make my own settings, so is it something easy? Yeah, of course. The only thing you might have a tiny issue with is how the magic is explained, but in terms of the mechanics, yeah, it's easy. No problem. Yan, can you use the weave to have insane reflexes like Jedi? You can, yeah. You could spend magic to make you super fast, but again, it's all about the magnitude. If you are doing something that is so obviously magical, the weave is going to fight back. So you don't often see a lot of big, obvious displays of power because they're so dangerous. They just tempt the weave, and that's scary. Dizzy Billy, is there anything about Overland dungeon generation procedures? Well, Overland, certainly. I have a whole section of the game called the Journey and Travel Rules. It's one of my favorite parts of the game. It makes the players feel like they've really been on the road. It's awesome. I love it. Dungeon generation, not so much. There will be some stuff, presumably. But honestly, that's not a real focus of the game. There are way better games to use to go dungeon delving. Again, in the Broken Empires, this is sort of a low to mid fantasy game. So what that means to me is that you're not going to have a bunch of crazy dungeons in the wilderness populated with all these monsters for no reason. If you come across a quote unquote dungeon in the wilderness, it was something. It is a ruin. It was something, and it is inhabited by something for a reason. All of these things will have reasons. So if you walk into a lair, like an old fort, let's say, that's ruined and it's broken down, and now it's inhabited by goblin tribes, okay, let's say. Those goblins are going to have a food source. They're going to have a hierarchy. They're going to have a social structure. They're going to have guards probably defending their home. If you attack them and then leave, when you come back, they're going to be ready for you, obviously, right? So going into a dungeon is really dangerous in the D&D sense, because in a game like D&D or Pathfinder, the idea is, we go in, we take a few hit points damage, we spend some resources, then we go out, we have a short rest, and we come back in and fight again. That's not how this works. If you try and do that in the Broken Empires RPG, your characters will be dead by the time they get 500 feet inside the complex, probably, because combat is so dangerous. Not necessarily deadly, but dangerous. You really only want to break out the swords when there's no other choice. Or you can take the guy by surprise. Or you're really awesome. But even so, even if you're really awesome, there's no guarantee you're going to roll great in any given exchange, right? So, dungeon delving is not a huge focus of this game. Of course, there's going to be aspects of it, right? Because we all like that stuff. We all like going into old ruins and tombs and stuff. So, of course, that's going to be there. We like, solving puzzles and dealing with traps. So, yes, that will be there. But it's not a massive focus of the game, just so you know. Okay. Ho. Metalk says, question, is the starter set one quest for one evening or multiple sessions, like levels 1 to 3, even though we have no levels in the Broken Empires? I haven't written that adventure yet. We're still working on that. I know what it's about, but I haven't written that yet. The idea is I want to make that valuable for you. So I'm kind of treating it like you can expect to get a couple sessions out of it, depending on how long your sessions are. So yeah, I'm giving it some meat. I'm giving it some robustness. That's our goal, for sure. Where are we here? How many monsters are planned in the bestiary in the core book? Is there a monster book planned? Lots of them is super important to me as a GM. Thanks for the kind words earlier. Blessings from Israel. Oh, thank you, my friend. There's going to be enough to get you started in the core book, and we've already unlocked the Beasts of the Broken Empires, which is an additional 12 things for the bestiary, which is great. But again, this isn't D&D. You're not going to be wandering the world fighting all these different kinds of bizarre, inexplicable monsters for no reason, right? If there's a monster to fight, there's a reason why it's there, and it's a big deal. So again, it's not D&D. You really kind of got to get all the D&D tropes out of your head. You got to get fighting all the time with no cost out of your head. You've got to get monsters everywhere. You've certainly got to get the idea that everyone has magic out of your head. That is not the case. You also have to get out of your head the idea that there's these giant metropolises filled with all of these different monster races all frolicking together and baking bread. No, that is not the case. Monsters in the Broken Empires are there to be killed. Just ask anybody in a civilized territory. Now, there's exceptions. Of course, there's exceptions. But, okay. Yeah, like you can play a half-orc. That's a playable race in the game. There's also ogres. You can play ogres. Ogres are pretty cool in the game. And there might be one or two other things in there too. We'll see. How hard? Same person. How hard will it be to convert adventures from other systems to Broken Empires? Anything that is D100 based is going to be familiar. It's going to be not too hard to do. You'll find a lot of similarities. Like if you're running BRP, basic role playing, there's a lot of similarities. So you'll probably be, you'd have to do a bit of a conversion, but nothing too terrible. Okay. All right. David Parker, so glad this came up on my feed. Very excited to go back. Going back this. Well, thank you. Always enjoyed your content. Very excited to see season 4 if it's a working playtest. It is, in fact, a working playtest. Thanks for joining us, David. Nibs, question. My question is, how well do you think the Broken Empires could work with old school Hex adventures? It seems this game could add that extra bit of immersion to old school adventure, enhancing the experiences. We have Hex crawl rules in the game. It is an addendum to the journey rules. So yes, you can do that. You can definitely do that. Nope. I think somebody's at my door, but I'm in the middle of a stream, so go away. All right. Okay. Can a new character start casting Disintegrate immediately? Are there any limits to created magic? There are tons of limits. Can a new character start casting Disintegrate immediately? It depends. It depends on what they're trained in, and it depends on how willing they are to tempt the weave. All of those limitations are built in. The bigger the spell, the more likely there's going to be a backlash. And also, there comes a cap point, too. If you're trying to make this gigantic spell that's going to do all this stuff, as soon as you hit a certain point, boop, it becomes a ritual spell. You must cast it as a ritual, which means it's going to take hours to cast and has all kinds of other things. So there's built-in limitations with magic. Again, get D&D out of your head. That is not how spellcasters work in this game. All right. Thane, oh wait, okay, I've backed Kickstarter and Vibe alone. Thank you, sir, ma'am, person. But where is the game on a spectrum of Powered by the Apocalypse on one end and Axe on the other? It's interesting you pick those two. Feel free to destroy that rating system for a construct of your own. So I've talked before a lot about how the real axis I'm interested in is between detail of resolution and speed of play. So I wouldn't pick Powered by the Apocalypse and Axe. But let's take it. So let's take a Powered by the Apocalypse game like, I don't know, Dungeon World, okay? Dungeon World on this side. Dungeon World is a fairly fast-moving game with, well, you could argue that Dungeon World is one of the more complex Powered by the Apocalypse games, but I said it, so let's use it. So that's sort of over here in the speed of play. Axe, which is a Venture Conquer King system, which I've never run, I own, and I quite love it. It's basically a reskin of AD&D. Axe is still kind of an OSR game, so I wouldn't call that a simulationist game. I would call that just a more complex OSR game. What I'm talking about over in Detail of Resolution is the real simulationist games like Harnmaster, RuneQuest, Mithras, Chivalry and Sorcery, games like this. So my game is far more to this side than it is to this side. It's far more on the simulation side, but then I pull it back towards speed of play because I want that glorious richness of detail without having to slow the game to a crawl, right? For me, that's where I'm going. So I would say, to answer your question, closer to Axe than Powered by the Apocalypse, but there are very specific inspirations by Powered by the Apocalypse that go into this game. It is a combination and a blend of new school rules and old school rules, right? Because I just pick stuff that I like from all the games I've played. Okay. Astrolama, will the core book contain descriptions of competing factions? Yeah, in the settings section, there's going to be all kinds of talks about that. John Warner, thanks for the tip, John. TBE feels so unique, being inspired by so many games. How did you pull that off from a creative mindset perspective? The psychology of this seems so daunting. Absolutely can't wait to play this game. Thank you. My designer, my head designer and Kickstarter guru, Nav, always says to me, no one else could do this but you. I've been playing a bazillion games and running a bazillion games for over 40 years. I know so many different games. I have such experience with so many different games. And I have the time, inclination, and energy to do this. Most people don't have that. Most people don't have the luxury of having all of this time to dedicate an entire year, 24/7 of their lives to developing a game and then putting it on a Kickstarter. Most people can't do that. But I do. And I count myself lucky to be able to have that. So it was daunting, and it is. It remains daunting. The amount of work I now have in front of me because the project is backed, there's a lot. It's going to be a busy, busy year to the end of Christmas. Oh my God, it's going to be a busy year. But that's okay, because I'm not alone. I have a very, very great team of like-minded creative people that are working with me to help bring it to life. Without them, there would be no Broken Empires at all. So it's all about the teamwork, man. But yeah, basically my whole thing was, I've always wanted to make that perfect game. And the Broken Empires isn't the perfect game. There's no such thing as a perfect game. This is one I'm designing myself, and it's still not the perfect game. There's still things in this game that I wish I could put in from other games, but I can't because they just don't work. They don't fit. There's no such thing as a perfect game. But we never stop trying to make the perfect game. This is probably as close as I'll ever get to the perfect game for me. But that's also my design philosophy, is I'm making this game for me. I'm making a game that I want to see in the market, knowing that it's kind of an underserved market. There's a lot of guys out there, girls, guys, people, that kind of want something else. They want some more meat on the bones. They want some simulation in there, but they don't want to go crazy. That's who I'm talking to. That's who this is for, right? And I love the fact I'm able to give them this, you know? And I love the fact that I'm able to give like the 5e people or the OSR people something different if they've never experienced this before. I love that. And maybe it won't be to their liking. That's okay. They can go back to OSR. God knows there's enough versions of that game out there, right? All right. Captain Nolan, I'm afraid it will be too crunchy like MERP. I think this game is way less crunchy than MERP. In MERP, in Middle Earth Role-Playing System, MERPs as I call it, there's tons of math. Tons of math. You have to roll D100, it might open end, and then you got to roll an add, and then you got to add your specific skill, and then you got to subtract the defensive bonus of the opponent, and then you have to consult a chart to see whether you did hits and or a critical. There are no charts in my game, and God, there's none of that math. None of that math at all. Is my game more complex than certain games? Yes. Is it more crunchy? Not really. As I've said before in this stream, it's way less crunchy than Pathfinder 2. In many ways, you could say that it's way less crunchy than D&D 5e at some of the upper levels. So it might not be to your liking, and that's cool. It's not going to be to everybody's liking. But crunchy, like MERP? No, not at all. Not at all. Thiago Prado, thanks for the tip, Thiago. Trevor, we already know Broken Empires is inspired by several games from a mechanical standpoint. Where do you believe you're drawing inspiration to develop its setting? From me, obviously not just me. When I started the setting, obviously it was improvised because I was playing the game on the channel and I was developing the world as I go, and I still am. And so as I started to develop it, I was like, what do I want to see? What kinds of settings inspire me? What makes me excited? The first season was very bog standard fantasy, kind of proto-European pastoral England countryside kind of thing, high mountains, you know, all that kind of stuff. It was great. And then I thought, let's do something else. Season 2, Ironsworn, northern, cold, bleak Scandinavian setting. Awesome. 3, let's go to the pirates, man. Let's go on the high seas and have that experience. And it was great. 4, oh, let's go to the desert. Come on, let's see what this is. And so it just naturally evolved. So I have been influenced by everything I've ever read and everything I've ever seen. There's little pieces of every fantasy setting and game in this book, because of course there is. It all seeps in over a lifetime, right? So yeah, there's many, many, many aspects that I'm inspired by. Okay. Where are we? Boy, there's still so many. How long have we been doing this now? I don't even tell. Carson, how long? How long have we been doing this? I guess I could just check, right? Oh my God, 1 hour and 20. Oh my God. Okay, let's look at the questions that Carson has brought up. Answered that one. Skills can be higher than 100, right? Can you explain this a little more? Yes, they can, although that might actually change. I'm contemplating putting a hard cap on it, but probably not. Skills can be higher than 100, but it's really unusual because there's a point of diminishing returns once you start to spend experience points on skills over 100, that there's better things to spend your XP on. You can always fail a roll. If you roll a 99 or 100, that's always a fail regardless of your skill. But if you have a skill over 100, what it does is it gives you essentially expertise. It gives you like, if I had a skill of 120, that tens digit of 2 basically adds as 2 bonus SLs to any success. And of course, any roll is going to be a success unless I roll 99 or 100. So that's how that works. Yeah, it's rare. It's really rare. Some really badass monsters have that, but player characters not likely going to have that kind of thing. Although magic, you might have that a lot, right? Because you combine 2 different skills with magic, so you could get that. But yeah, you just basically take the tens die of the new skill, and that becomes bonus SLs to spend on the bottom end, right? On a successful roll. Is the $125 the real starting point for getting into this game? I don't know. It depends. If you're a purely digital person, then $39 is the starting point. We love books. We pride ourselves on books. We like making awesome books, solid, usable books that are going to survive use at a table and transport to the game. And we love all that stuff. We love awesome art. We love great layout and design. We love bookmarks in our books, cloth bookmarks. We like all that stuff. So for me, there's no way I'd just buy a digital bundle if I had the option. Of course not. I'd buy all the stuff. I want all the books. I love this stuff because I'm that guy. Not everybody's that guy. Okay. Attacker rolls well, only to have that great roll nullified by a better defense roll. Possible. It's possible because if you're the defender, so this is the whiff factor. Thanks, Carson. This is the other one I wanted to address. Someone had asked about the whiff factor. For those of you unfamiliar, what that means is I roll and miss. Oh no! Or I roll and my success is taken away from me by the other guy's roll. Oh no! I whiffed. You roll dice. Those dice represent the chaos of the world. The reason why we roll dice is to see what if there's a chance we fail. If there's no chance at failure, there's no need to roll dice. There isn't. But if you're in a fight, there's always a chance to fail, which means I could roll great, but guess what? He rolled better. That's not a whiff on your part. That's a great success on his part, because flip it around. He rolls a great attack. You roll better. Did he whiff? Or did you just roll better? It's one exchange. There's no whiff there. That's what happened. But the only way he's going to roll better is if his skill is comparable to yours. If he's got a way lower skill, like if you have a skill of 80 and you're fighting against a guy with a skill of 30, the odds of him beating you are very slim. Possible. It is possible, but I'd put money on the fact you're going to clean up against that guy, right? So whiff factor. Yeah. Do you sometimes fail? Yeah, because you roll dice. And sometimes you fail. There's no insta-win button. There's no guarantees. That's built into the mechanics. So if you're the kind of person that wants to roll and only ever succeed, I don't know why you're playing role-playing games that use dice. I'm not trying to be a jerk to this person. I'm just speaking to that general idea. Okay. How deadly is the game on the scale Immortal Characters to Meat Grinder? The game, as I've sort of talked about before, combat is dangerous but not necessarily deadly because there's so many other ways to win a fight. There's also so many other ways to win a conflict that don't require violence. You could talk your way to things. There's all kinds of things you can do. So you really don't have the 0 to hero thing in this game like you have in like D&D. You don't start as an incompetent boob and then turn into a demigod. You start as a very competent member of your profession, and you get slowly better at things you want to get slowly better at. But I can tell you that playing long-term games of Mithras, which this game very much is on parallel with in terms of character development, we've been playing a Mithras game right now for like years. And our characters are very good at the things they're good at, but there are things they're not good at. And it doesn't guarantee their success. We're tough. Yep, we're tough. But there's always a risk. Let me give you a little story here. Because this is really new, okay? This just happened like 2 weeks ago. So I'm playing in a game of the Broken Empires right now. I'm a player. my friend Jared is running us through the game. We had an experience the other night where there's 3 of us, okay? We come across this ruin across a bridge, and on the other side of this bridge are 3 bandits. 2 of them have bows. One of them is sword and shield, heavily armored. They basically say, give us your stuff or we'll kill you. We say no. So they begin to charge us across the bridge. So, combat begins. We roll initiative. We fail. Damn. We fail to seize the initiative. So the enemy runs towards us, but they can't get to us in this round, but they could get to us in the next round. As they're running across the bridge, Ashley, his character, takes his crossbow, which he had loaded, and fires at one of the archers. Hits him through the cheek, incapacitates him. The guy drops. Not dead, but out of the fight. Okay? Now it's our turn. We know that if we move up to these 2 guys, and then we lose initiative, again, they're going to charge us, and that's bad. But we think, you know what? We have to try. So, we roll initiative, and we lose the initiative. Or, sorry, before that, we do. We move up to the bridge towards them, but not quite at them yet. We're close range, but not engaged. Then we roll initiative, we lose initiative. We're like, uh-oh. But then we spend resolve to seize the initiative. Our precious resolve points we spend to seize the initiative to make sure that we go before them by a heartbeat. So, I rush towards the leader, and I swing, and I miss. My friend Ross, with his bearded axe, he rushes towards the leader. He swings. The guy fails to parry. His bearded axe comes in, chops him, slashes him in the face, and he drives him back into the next zone, causing him to trip and stumble, bleeding all over the rocks. Prone. Then it's their turn. The leader, who's prone and bleeding from this potentially lethal hit, looks at us and says, I give up. Please don't kill me. The other archer says, to hell with this, and runs. 2 rounds. Decisive fight. That couldn't have gone better for us, but I will tell you this. When we moved to engage with the bandit leader, I was no slouch. I could fight, but I was terrified. I was like, are we sure there isn't any other way to deal with these guys? And because it was a combat play test, no, there was no other way to deal with these guys. We had to play it out. But I was terrified. I was like, uh-oh, this could be bad. And it was exhilarating. It was awesome. That victory, that perfect victory, oh, it was like butter. It was so good. Mostly because we knew the same thing could have happened to us. Now, players have certain advantages that your generic NPC and enemy doesn't, right? But still, it was something. So, is it deadly? Not necessarily. Is it dangerous? Yes. 0 to hero? No. Meat grinder to immortal doesn't really happen. You start very competent. Okay, I'm falling behind here. All right. I'm gonna have to cut this off soon because we've been at this for a while. Okay. I'm trying to see things that I have not yet answered. John B says, why do all books start on Kickstarter? Because it's the best way to get a book made. In the old days, this would have been impossible. If I had this great game, I would have had to find a publisher and then convince them to take a chance on me, who was a completely unknown person in the publishing world. That would never happen. Would never happen. That's why it's just an incredible tool. I can reach out directly to my core audience and say, guys, I want to produce something for you. Are you interested? And they get to say, yes, let's make it happen. Let's all share in this. That's amazing. That's why. It's pretty cool. Okay. JP, yes, I already addressed the swinginess of D100. Just a lot of compliments from people, guys. Thank you so much. Lots of the stronghold rules. Ernesto, who helped you design core rules mechanics of the Broken Empires? Nobody. Me. I did it. Now, that said, I stand on the shoulders of giants. I was inspired by incredible designers like the guys who designed Delta Green or Harnmaster or Mithras. Those guys are amazing. Or even D&D, man. You gotta thank old Gary. Gary, the father of us all. Gary and Dave, the fathers of us all, right? Yeah, they all helped design the core mechanic of the Broken Empires. All right. Mr. Solis, question. I backed the Kickstarter at the cheapest level for a physical book for the first day reward. If upgrading my pledge, will I still get that first day back in gift? Yeah, you get the special little reward if you back at any physical level, so you should already have it, I think. Maybe Carson can correct me, but I think that's correct. That's a Kickstarter specific thing, a campaign specific thing. Okay. Okay. Oh, David and Dragons, do you have any plans for international partnerships? I would love to see a German edition. We need a game like Broken Empires. Not at the moment, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. Again, if the game does really well, we can look into that stuff. But right now, it's very daunting. It's a very daunting idea. So we'll see. Captain Nolan, who's the we you keep talking about? Oh, I guess it depends when I've said it. When I talk about us and we making the game, it's me and my tiny little team. That's what I talk about. It's just easier to say that. All right. Since there's no classes, are character builds more open? First of all, I hate the term character builds. It makes it seem like this is a math exercise or an engineering exercise, and it's not. Could I make a stealthy magic using assassin? Yes, you absolutely can. Yes. Okay, great. Agile Monk says Mithras and Hardmaster. That's all good. Oh, Luna Rose Manor. What's your favorite color? Look at you being all sneaky. Don't really have one, tell you the truth. I like all colours the same, I suppose. Don't like pink. There, we'll go with that. Howardino, what would you say the selling point for your RPG is? If you were trying to convince me to play it, what would you say? I would say, go check out the Kickstarter page. It does the selling for me. We've worked really hard so that the page does the selling for us. So that's what I would say. Also, I've been at this a long time, and I like what I like. And if you like what I like, you're going to like this. And if you don't, you're not. And there's nothing I can do about it. But check it out. Check out the page. It's going to tell you everything you need to know. Durin's Cat. Great name, by the way. Durin's Cat. What are the infection rules like? Oh, I love them. What are they like? Well, when you take a wound, that wound has to be treated. If it's not treated, your body's going to treat it itself. Every time a wound is treated, it has a recovery rating, basically. That's the number you roll at the end of every day to see if it recovers, if it gets better. Fumbles on that roll means that the wound has become infected. Once the wound has become infected, you got a problem. You're going to have a healer work to purge the infection, because if you don't, that wound could become lethal as sepsis sets in. This is really a problem on a journey. You do not want to go on a journey while you have open wounds, or even treated wounds for that matter. Well, treated wounds you get away with a little bit more. You don't want to take wounds on a journey unless, well, you don't want to take wounds on a journey, period. But if you do, it becomes really important to try and find what I call a green zone, which is a place of refuge. Because only in places of refuge can you heal. Because you don't heal on the road, right? So, yeah, it's built into the rules. I'm not going to get too much in the weeds here, but basically infection is always a problem if you've taken wounds. Always a problem. So you need to make sure that you have a healer with you because it's a big deal. It can kill you, right? Again, most of the time you're not going to have characters dropping dead of infection, but it could happen. Could it happen? Yes, it could. Yes, it could. Christopher Moore, Laconius, do wounds do anything before a wound check is failed? Yes. Every time you take a wound, that area might become incapacitated. Any wound can theoretically incapacitate you unless you have a high toughness, because that'll mitigate that. But it also wears you down. Like death by 1,000 cuts also happens. You can get something called the weary condition. That's once you take a total of 10 wound points in any location, you're at minus 20 to everything you do until your total wound points gets down to 10 or less. J.E. Bacata, totally love your voice acting as well as Me, Myself, and I, or on Me, Myself, and I. Looking forward to Broken Empires. Thank you very much. I am a professional. I've been a voice actor for 25 years. God, if you can believe that. My God. All right. Yes, so I've already addressed the whiff factor. Okay. Hi, Trevor. So excited you're also making your own game. So the social mechanics are driven by your choice of words. Is that like choosing conversational approaches or the player's actual words? how it works is it depends how you play. If you play in the first person, if you inhabit the character and speak in their voice, or in their, you don't have to use a voice. That has nothing to do with it. But if you speak in the first person, I do this, I do that, as opposed to the third person, he does this, she does that. If you speak in the first person, then whatever words you say are going to trigger the skill. That's going to be up to the GM to interpret, and the rest of the table. Most of the time it's obvious. Sometimes it's not, and then you can have a conversation. But most of the time it's obvious. You want to make sure that if you are terrible at intimidate, let's say, that your character's skill is terrible at intimidate, you have to be careful, because if you utter intimidating words to a target, to a person, to an NPC, then that's going to trigger the intimidate skill. And if you're terrible at the intimidate skill, you have to roll it, and you're probably going to fail, and that's going to hurt the party's chances of getting a better success. It might even cause the party to fail outright, depending. So you quickly learn, what is my character good at, and how can I leverage that? Now, if you are a very charismatic player and you want to be able to leverage your own personal charisma, great. Make a character with a high persuade skill or inspire skill. Great. It still doesn't guarantee that you're going to get the skill you want. It entirely depends on your approach. What you say matters. Words matter. And who you're saying it to matters. And that's all context-based. Some people are going to react well to certain approaches and worse to other approaches. There's things in the game called vulnerable and disliked skills. If someone is vulnerable to a particular approach, you're going to get a big bonus when using that approach. If they have a disliked approach, then if you use that approach, they're not going to like that. You get a penalty to that. So context-based. But yeah, basically, you're driven by your choice of words. It is your actual words, but it doesn't have to be first person. You don't have to put on a voice or act. None of that. You don't have to. It's completely usable with whatever style of play you use, or I think most of them. Okay. All right. Boy, there's so much. I might have to do a second one of these guys, which I have no problem doing. Stephen Pullen taking this chance to say thank you for all the inspiration and entertainment in the last several years. I backed your project and cannot wait to get it to my table. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you very much. Okay, where are we? Keldon, I'm listening while doing housework. How does SimLight handle housework? Poorly. Okay, where are we? Okay. Godwin Gear. So it seems like resolve is like willpower in Dragonbane / Forbidden Lands. Mages can spend their resolve on their magic. What can marshals and God-aligned characters spend their willpower on? Everybody can spend their resolve. It gives you favor, so you can use it to increase your rolls. But specifically for spellweavers, they use it to try and cover the spread when they cast magic. So it's more valuable to spellweavers, but it's universally valuable. You always want to have a pool of resolve. It's your character's internal, resolve, hence the name. So marshals rely on it too. God-aligned characters rely on it too, just like anybody else do. The only difference is the God-bound, which is what priests are called, do not rely on resolve for their miracles. They rely on their piety. They rely on their dedication to their God. I'm going to talk about that in the next AMA because it's very cool, but I'm running out of time. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, you know what? Yeah, sorry guys. I'm going to get I got to jump down now because we're running out of time. I'm gonna deal with my patrons if I can and members. So first of all, Thuidens, no math at the table should be a global game design policy. It is best, I think, if the dice tell what happened and the effects are intuitive enough that they are mostly tracked to the character sheet. I agree, and I'm trying to make a game that does just that. Okay. Googler, thank you for the $10, my friend. Thank you, Trevor. Love the content. I'm fully on board and can't wait to see what this thing becomes. I can see the effort. Amazing work. Thank you very much. Very much appreciated. Excuse me. Alex Jeffries, how easy is it to become permanently injured like Arn's limp? I don't want to say it's easy, but it happens. It happens. Okay. Oh, I'm losing my spot. Terry Priest, I've been off the grid for a few days and behind the curve a little. Does your game have tools similar to Perilous Wilds for world building and dungeon creation? Ish. You don't really need Perilous Wilds for you're asking about world building and dungeon creation? Not so much, but there's nothing stopping me from putting that in. It depends how much I can jam in there before we go to print, basically. So I guess the answer is yes, I'm trying to provide as much as I can, but I also don't want to reinvent the wheel. There are great supplements out there like the Perilous Wilds. So you might be better off just using the Perilous Wilds in conjunction with this. But I'm going to try and make anything I put in the book is going to try and be specific to these rules. You know what I mean? So we'll see. We'll see. Okay. Oh boy. Vortak. Hey Trevor, any way to tell us what your GM emulator might encompass? It's going to be very similar to the Mythic, but it's going to be tailored. Also, well, I don't want to say too much about it. I just know that Tana Pigeon is working on something cool right now. Okay. All right. My goodness. Mantis God, character sheet ETA. As soon as I get done with this, I am working on the redesign of the updated character sheet so that I can show it to you in the video that I'm trying to get done in the next couple days. I'm going to be out of town next week, so my team is going to have to take over everything mostly for a week while I'm away. I'm going to be checking in, obviously, but I'm not going to be able to do a lot of this kind of stuff, I don't think, while I'm on the road. So I want to get that character sheet video done quick because I want to show you. So that's the very next thing we're doing as soon as I say goodbye to you here. Okay. Where are we? Wowie. Ha 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 ha. Wowie. Okay. One last question here, because it's the last one on the list. Adalada, what is the difference between magnitude and potency? Magnitude is how offensive to reality the spell is. Potency is how much power you're putting in it to do a specific thing. So if I'm trying to use a spell to damage someone, that's a factor of potency. How much potency am I putting in? How many points of damage do I want the spell to do? The magnitude is based on how I'm forming that spell. Is it obvious? If I blast you with magical bolts, that's a magnitude 4 spell. That's obviously impossible in nature. That's a mag 4 spell. But if it does only a little bit of damage, that's a low potency spell. Right? Basically. There are many ways to use potency. In a sense, you could look at potency kind of like how Savage Worlds handles magic powers. So Savage Worlds says there are powers universally that do things. If you're trying to damage someone with a bolt spell, this is how much it costs. Then there's trappings. The trappings are, well, what does it look like? Is it fire? Is it ice? Is it water? Is it electricity? That doesn't matter. What matters is how much damage does it do? Unless it does matter. If you're in plate armor and you're standing in water and you get hit with a lightning bolt, that's going to have more effect. So in essence, that's kind of how potency works. There are blanket rules for how things are costed out. Oh, you want to create armor points for yourself. Then it follows this formula. It's this kind of spell. Oh, you want to change the size of a creature, enlarge or shrink. That costs this. The trappings would be, how are you doing that? Are you using this bind and strand? That's up to you. But remember that the more against reality it is, the higher the magnitude is. So it's really incumbent upon the Spellweaver character to be careful about how they describe it and how they infuse it, right? Anyway, so that's that. I have to go now. It's been a long time. Thank you all so much. I will do another one of these because there was lots of great questions and way more answers to give. Thank you for your support. Please consider adding on some extra things so we can get to our stretch goals. There's so many great things coming down the pipe. Tell your friends, tell your family to come and support the project. Certainly anybody who enjoys a slightly different experience, a more detailed, rich experience that is about playing real people in a tough world, that doesn't make you superheroes, but does make you real seeming characters in a real seeming world that forces you to make tough choices and also kind of do awesome things. Then consider backing the Broken Empires. Thank you so much, guys. I'm going to try and end the stream in a way that doesn't make me look like I don't know how to end the stream. Okay, farewell.